Good morning. Welcome. This is the Governmental Affairs Committee. We will be having hearings this morning, and I want to welcome everyone here and make sure you're at the right place. Before we begin, I would like to ask Chairman Lumpson if he will open us in prayer.
Okay, if you would, bow, please. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love and your goodness to us, for watching over us and caring for us. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that you've given to us to be here today, and for the responsibility that we have to make decisions for things regarding the state of Georgia. We just pray, Lord, that you would give us your wisdom, your guidance as we seek to do that which is in the best interest of all. We pray it in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.
Thank you. Just so everyone knows, this committee is here. We have rules. They're in place. We've had subcommittee meeting. Several things. We're talking about a cityhood case today. Make sure that you have your facts straight. That's one of the things that when we have these hearings, I'm kind of a stickler about. Make sure your facts are there. We're not getting political in these hearings. And I do feel like there's a couple things that we need to talk about because of the cityhood and issues that have come up in the past. The feasibility study versus an impact study. They're two distinct, different reports and reviews. The feasibility studies are designed to assess whether the services that are proposed in the city intends to provide, along with the necessary administrative functions, can be appropriately funded by the available revenues. Feasibility studies do not provide insight into the potential impact of the proposed city on the surrounding areas. An impact study is designed to illustrate how a proposed city would impact its existing governmental entity, physically or otherwise. The impact study can be commissioned by any government that may be affected by the creation of the proposed city. Often, county governments are the ones that do that. The House Governmental Affairs Committee requires, according to our rules, must have a feasibility study for each proposed city that comes before our committee. Impact studies are not required, but are accepted for review by the committee. According to the committee rules, both types of reports must be conducted by one of the following groups: the Carl Vinson Institute for Government, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, or at the discretion of the chair, any public institution affiliated with the University System of Georgia. Okay. These are important facts, and we do set our rules at the beginning of the session, which we did last year. So we are in order. These have been worked. The bills we're going to hear one bill today, and it's going to be House Bill 841. And I do believe the chairman is Chairman Dollar here. Okay. We will stand at ease for a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay. Chairman Dollar, are you ready?
Yes,
And
ma'am. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
we've got your mic on, and if you would go right ahead.
Uh, Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you, committee. I had asked the chairman to try to get this moving this session so that we weren't all dealing with half a dozen cities at once. What we have before you is HB 841, and I'm going to call it the LC number just to make sure that everybody on the committee and in the attendance is working off the same document. I have LC 47 1138S. Is that not what we? Okay, sorry. I need to make sure I'm working off this right document. LC 47 1367S. Okay, that's that. HB 841 is the result of several years of work and interaction and feedback from the community. The proposed city of East Cobb, as you can see, Representative Williams, we have your maps, is just under 60,000 residents. The services provided would be police, fire, zoning, code enforcement, and parks. The map, as you can see it over here within East Cobb, is literally that I call it a bite maybe that comes out in Fulton County created by the river. It is a very compact and concise map. As you can see, it splits very few precincts and does not split any neighborhoods. It is truly a community of interest map. The governmental setup provided in the bill is a little bit different than what most of us are used to. It provides for a six-member council. All of those members will be elected, would be elected citywide. However, it creates 3 districts, and 3 of those members there must be one from each district. And that was just to ensure that there was representation, there would be representation across the entire city, even though the city is much smaller than my district. And I have a pretty compact district. And that is the basics of the bill. They would be 4-year staggered terms. And so that first round of elections, half the post would be for 2 years, half the post would be for 4 years. And then in 2 years, we'd have, it would revert to 4-year terms. There is not a mayor elected in a conventional sense. The mayor under this bill would be chosen from among the city councilmen and would perform much like a chairman. It's a city manager style government, and this process would be familiar to Cobb Countyans because it is very similar to the way that the Cobb County Board of Education selects their chairman. It's from among one of their members, and there are a couple of reasons for this. I imagine I can probably dive into them as this meeting goes forward, but I think the main reason was to by having 6 members, almost any decision made by the council has to be a supermajority, 6 out of 4. That helps to ensure that for it to move forward, it has to be hopefully very good policy, and at the very least has overwhelming support. I got into it very briefly yesterday. at the federal government, and here at the state level, there are multiple checks and balances. We have a Senate, we have a House, we have a governor, and for any measure to proceed, it has to run quite the gauntlet to achieve passage. What I've noticed and others have noticed is that at the local level, it's not quite so rigorous, and so just trying to install as many checks and balances as we can under this system. So at the city and county level, council approves it, the county commission approves it, it's done. So by having a supermajority, I think that we can make sure that we are ensuring that good policy is going to be put forward. I left out, I'm sorry, Chairman or Chair Lady, there is one more service. So we have police, fire, zoning code enforcement, parks, and road maintenance. I left that one out. Road maintenance. With that, I will probably, in my opening remarks, that is the gist of this effort. Again, it's been multiple years in the making. This has been 4 years. I've been overwhelmed by the amount of community involvement. The committee that organized to form the city has done yeoman's work. They have really impressed me with their level of commitment, with their organization, and their passion for this community. I can get into a little bit more of the history, but I think it's probably better at this time to let others who came to speak to do that. And I'm happy to stick around and answer wrap up questions, but I'll yield to any questions that members may have now.
Thank you. You do have a question. Let's see. Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Dollar, the feasibility study that we require for these cities was done, and this one was found to be feasible. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And I should have mentioned that. It was mentioned yesterday at subcommittee. It's not outlined in law, but it is a rule and practice of this committee that any city that any potential city must have a feasibility study done from an approved organization. Ours was done by Georgia State, and the feasibility study came back that the city would be feasible. In fact, there would be a surplus, and many are hopeful that the city could operate at or lower, that they could, it's feasible that taxes would not go up. The possibility is there that taxes could go down. So the feasibility study came back very strong.
Isn't it also true that this committee, nor the House, Senate, nor the governor will create a new city here? We'll simply allow the voters in this area to decide if they want to be a new city. Isn't that correct?
You're absolutely right. If we pass this, it would do nothing except go to the voters and let them decide.
So whoever wants this has got to make a campaign and convince the majority of the people in this area, and then the voters can decide, correct?
That is the process, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's see. Representative Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two questions. The first is, can you walk us through the changes from the original LC to the substitute today? So the original LC that you mentioned, LC 47-1103, what are the changes that are in the substitute?
Representative, I don't think that I could walk through all those changes because I can't recall what was in the original. There have been multiple changes. We had, the committee hosted series of town halls. And based on feedback that we heard during those town halls and that were taken during polls, changes were made to the bill. And yesterday I commented, I had to thank Lead Counsel Stuart Morelli because I was constantly calling him to say, hey, I think, we need to look at this. How can we do this? If you want to, when we have when we take other speakers, I can try to look at where we started from where we ended up, but I wouldn't want to misspeak and tell you something wrong.
Yeah, and so my second question kind of speaks to that, which is just that this has, I know you're saying that this has been vetted and folks have talked about it and it's been through a rigorous process, but this actually has moved so fast that the current version of this bill hadn't even been uploaded online. So that means that unless you're a representative sitting in this room, the public doesn't have access to this bill. And so if you don't know the changes and this isn't available publicly anywhere, I mean, I think that this is one of those instances where sometimes people in the public will complain about things being done in the dark of night. This is why they say that.
What is in the bill has been presented by the committee to the public, to the residents of East Cobb. There for several weeks, perhaps months now, and there haven't been any last minute changes. The reason the bill is new is because we just came into session. The changes as far as they've been presented to the community back home is no different.
Right. So I'm just pointing out that we're voting on this when this is not publicly available to folks in that area. That's all I'm pointing out.
Thank you.
Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Dollar, I do want to ask some follow-up questions about the governance structure that's been laid out in this bill. You mentioned having 6 members, having attempted to have some equal representation in the proposed city. And I'm just thinking of a scenario in which 3 of the at-large members could potentially be elected from District 1, as well as having a District 1 rep, which would create a pretty big imbalance. That would be a 4 out of 6 members living in one district. And then with the ability of the council to appoint a mayor, those 4 members could potentially also appoint somebody who lives in District 1. So I'm curious as to why the setup is in that way and how voters can be assured that there'll be equal representation across the entire city.
Well, I think it's important to bear in mind that if that scenario were to occur, and if that played out, that no council member would live further than, I think, 5 miles from the furthest. So I'm not super concerned. They may care more about this Kroger than that Kroger, but we're not talking about different counties and vastly different communities. So
but it is true that that potential scenario could happen.
it's very astute, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have a follow-up question, Madam Chair. Are you at all concerned about the timing of this proposal, given that the municipal bond market is very likely to be unstable? We know that this is not the only cityhood bill on the table, and one of the biggest concerns that has been expressed from experts in the bond market, as well as bipartisan leaders, is what's going to happen if something like the city of Buckhead passes. It's going to have a trickle across effect for the entire state. And so one would think that creating a new city under these conditions would create instability right away and affect the way in which cities are able to borrow and be financially stable.
I'd like to interrupt if I could. This is about the city of East Cobb. We are not talking about any of the other cities that are being proposed. And I don't think it's relative to this particular issue. And we want to keep each cityhood on its own merits. So if we would all remember to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my point was just, we know that the municipal bond market is not specific to one city. And that's merely what I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Representative Sands.
Chairman Dollar, real quick, LC 471367S is a committee substitute for this committee, correct, that you're presenting here today?
Yes, sir.
So it would not normally be available on the legislative page until the committee actually passed it. Is that correct?
That's accurate.
And that changes made here is reflective on your part and the committee's part in making sure that the community had a say and had ability to modify it, which you're open to.
That's accurate.
Thank you.
And I don't think that, that any changes contained in this would surprise the committee who is going out, and it's their job to sell this to the community and to make sure that everybody is educated. So as much as possible, this is a product of what the community has been pushing it, itself.
Chairman Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chairman Dollar. The makeup of the elected body there is a concern for me. As a former mayor, I always like to see the mayor, the executive branch of government elected separately from the legislative branch of government, which would be the city council. But one question I do have for you: you have 6 council members. What happens in the case of a tie?
They would have to work it out, or the measure would not pass.
Okay. So it's just one of those things that they have to continually look at that issue and maybe postpone it, come back next month. There's no way to break that at that time.
What I've seen, and I can't take credit for this. This is an idea I borrowed from one of our colleagues when they're working on Lost Mountain, and I thought it very interesting. And I went back and talked to my folks about it, and they seem to like it too. Well, I think what's attractive is that in our community, in several of the surrounding cities, they've seen a lot of change, and a lot of the change has been driven by in many cases a mayor, somebody who comes in who has been anointed by the people to come in and do this, and you create like a conflict, where you have a strong mayor and a little city council that they sometimes have to work with. Really wanted this to be a true city council, and as Chairman Setzer put it, the mayor would be first among equals, and it's a 2-year term. They can serve, they can be reelected to that. And it is new, but I think it will serve our community very well. The idea is that it's a great place. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. And, I think we're wary of one person, coming in, being elected mayor, and then coming in and, having a vision for East Cobb, and for almost everybody that lives there, the vision is what it is, and that this system would most help to facilitate that.
If I could, with a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Coming from being a mayor of a small community, if you didn't give the mayor the ability to vote, but you gave the mayor the ability to break to vote in the case of a tie, and you gave the mayor a veto power, and you also took away the mayor's ability to have a veto stand in the case of a supermajority, you could still accomplish the same thing and not necessarily have a very strong executive member of government there. But there's just another way to do that.
There will still be a mayor in this city. It'll serve very much as a chairman of the council.
Thank you.
Representative Maynard.
Thank you, Chair. Representative Chair Dollar, my question is a follow-up to Representative Wynn's question. How many people are in each district? Are they equally divided? And what is the mile from the northern border and the southern border and the eastern border and the western border?
I couldn't give you exact mileage, but I would put it anywhere between maybe 5 miles from north to south, and 5 from east to west. I'll get on the phone and Google it, but I don't know it off top. Each district is within, I think, 1% deviation, and they're just, each is under 20,000. So they are equally apportioned.
Thank
So,
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Dollar, I think there was some comments made yesterday about this new city being the size of Rome, Gainesville, Statesboro. Would this new city of East Cobb be the biggest city in Cobb County?
I don't believe so, man. No.
It looks bigger than the city of Marietta's footprint, which means that it would be the biggest.
I don't believe that to be the case. Population wise, I don't believe so. You know, we're talking about, you know, one of the largest swaths of unincorporated metro Atlanta in this portion of the county. It could, you know, we had at one point we were working with a version that was almost 3 times this size, you know, 3 years ago. But I don't believe it would be the largest city. Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly where it fell out with the others, but it's roughly the same size as Smyrna and smaller than Marietta, which I believe you represent.
Well, isn't it true that there's different ways to look at the footprint of a city? There's not only population, there's amount of taxable property, business property. So
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Representative Roberts.
Thank you. Chair Dollar, I understand the equal or the 6-member board and there being no one to break a tie. It's an interesting concept, but what happens when you have a mandatory issue that is required to be voted on that can't just die like the budget?
Just as here, we have, I mean, what happens if the Senate is one party and the House is another and they can't come together? You have to come together. They would do as all elected bodies do, and they would have to work it out.
We have several people that have asked to speak, and we do have one of our members of the House, Representative Anulowicz, is online, and she would like to speak.
Hi, thank you, everyone, and apologies that I'm remote. I'm actually headed to a meeting at my daughter's school, but I did want to talk today. As most of y'all know, I served on the Smyrna City Council for 10 years. I was mayor pro tem of the city of Smyrna, and I have a lot of concerns about the governance structure of this proposed city, and also about the public safety aspect. There are a few things I have concerns about. I am not opposed to cities. I love cities. Cobb County has 6 incredible cities that I call legacy cities, right? You've got Marietta, which is the largest city. This city would be larger than the city of Marietta in terms of population. There's the city of Smyrna, which is closely behind. Then you've got Austell, Powder Springs, Kennesaw, and Ackworth. And what people have said to me who support the city of East Cobb is, well, why shouldn't the people who live in East Cobb have the opportunity to have a city like you guys have in Smyrna? And my answer is that this proposed city of East Cobb is nothing like the city of Smyrna. It is nothing like the city of Marietta. It is nothing like any other city in Cobb County or any other city in Metro Atlanta. And what this governing structure will do is put the concentration of power potentially in one single cul-de-sac, in one single subdivision. And that, my friends, is not a city. That is an HOA. And I don't think that the people who moved to East Cobb, many of whom did so because it was not a city, they deliberately wanted to live somewhere that was unincorporated, are going to appreciate the fact that one group of people living in one particular subdivision potentially have all of the power in the city, and not just a supermajority, but they actually choose who the mayor is. And so that's my first concern. My second concern has to do with public safety. That's something that my understanding was added to this city fairly recently and per popular demand based on these, the meetings and the public forums that took place. Again, I'm not opposed to cities, but I do think that the residents that are ultimately going to be paying for the city need to go into this with their eyes wide open. And what residents of this proposed city of East Cobb need to understand right off the bat is that they're going to have higher homeowners insurance rates. The reason they will have higher homeowners insurance rates is because Cobb County has an ISO rating of 1 for the fire department. And I won't get into the weeds on this because I know y'all are going to be hearing from folks in the county government and with public safety. But an ISO rating of 1 is really, really good. It is really, really rare. And because when you live in a community that has an ISO rating of 1 for your fire, you pay less for your homeowner's insurance. And so these residents are going to lose that. I don't understand why there is any need to have police and fire. Again, I know what it costs to run a police department, to staff a police department, to staff and run a fire department, to equip a fire department. One ladder truck, God, 10 years ago was $1 million. Who knows what it costs now? And that's without the equipment. I don't think this city is being presented in a way where the residents who will be impacted by this are going to be able to make these decisions with their eyes wide open. That is concerning. So I've talked about my concerns with the governance structure. I've talked about my concerns with the public safety aspect of it. Again, you're going to hear from a lot of people who have very good ways of articulating their concerns. But these are two things that I really think need to be considered. I don't think this structure makes any sense. I do not think it lends itself to better representation. And in fact, when the Voting Rights Act was, under that, this happened in Fayette County in 2014, they tried to make all of their commission districts that large. And it was, you went through the courts and they couldn't do that because it doesn't give better representation to people. It lends itself to a concentration of power. And I think that if what people want, if their motivation for cityhood is to have better representation, to have that representation for the people, that is not what they're going to get with the city of East Cobb. And that's all I have to say on that. Thank you. Thank you for letting me
Thank you
speak.
very much. We appreciate that. I have on Zoom, I have another question for you, and that's Representative Gravely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Dollar, just a quick question. Are all of the proposed, could you tell me again how many city council members there would be?
6.
And they're all at-large districts?
They would all be elected citywide. Half them would be at large. The other half would be retained in individual districts.
In individual districts. I just want to make sure we're not misleading the public that not every one of them could live in the same cul-de-sac, because I live in a cul-de-sac. So that means that everybody on the left of me, the 3 houses to the left would be city council members, and the 3 houses to the right would be city council members, comprising 6 council members on the cul-de-sac of Ridgebrook Drive, correct?
If you so state, yes, sir.
Well, I think that would be impossible. And I want to make sure we're not misleading the public, that there are no such things as cul-de-sac city councils. Now, I understand if we're going to create a city, but we're not creating a cul-de-sac, correct?
I think the possibility of course is there, is the reality of that. What's going to happen? I just don't believe so. I mean, these are elections. These people are elected.
Yeah. So they're not like multi-member districts that were created before the last census or before the previous census we just had, correct?
No, these are not multi-member districts.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Let's see. We have one more question. Representative Maynard.
Out of the 3 districts, do does the socioeconomics of each district, are they similar, or is one district have a higher socioeconomic status than the other two?
I didn't look at it, but just from growing up there and living there my whole life, I don't imagine that there's much difference between those. They weren't done in that capacity. They were done because the Johnson's Ferry corridor runs down the center of it, and each district has roughly the same amount of that corridor. It was done geographically.
Thank you. I will tell you, we're going to open the comment section right now. We're going to limit everyone to 3 minutes. And our first one is Pamela Reardon, if you'd come to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Pamela Reardon. I actually have lived, and I still live in the exact center of the proposed cityhood. So I think I can answer some questions that maybe Matt didn't. From the bottom of Chattahoochee to the top, I would estimate it's 10 miles at the most, 10 miles, and width at the most 5 miles. So I'm a realtor. I know the area very, very well. It is very homogeneous in structure and makeup, and we all love each other. I moved from Sandy Springs in '99. So I've lived there for 22 years. And the reason at the beginning, the last time when they proposed this, I was against it because I am a small government, fiscally conservative person, very conservative. And this time, because they reduced it down to just under 60,000, and I could see it's more a community. I want the representation from us, the community. And that is one of the main reasons. Another reason is I don't want runaway zoning. And an example of that was just recently Z72, which falls within this area at the north part of Johnson Ferry and on Shallowford. There were so many, it took over a year, and the community lost in the end. And it was a bait and switch at the meeting. The attorney had a map, and then they said, no, well, we'll just pretend there's a street right here. And they should have come back and done it again, but they didn't, and the commissioners passed it. But let me tell you, in that area, I've sold houses in waterfront, and they had a lake in that area. The developer drained the lake, and I was going and making questions and talking to people and going, where is the water going to go? I mean, and we just had a major event September 7th in East Cobb with major flooding. Then for that is the impervious area that they build so many different subdivisions and have roads and cement and driveways. And there's people who are across the street from a couple thousand home subdivisions that are maybe like 10 years old are now getting all the gallons of water coming across under the street, and it's washing out the infrastructure, because the infrastructure, let's face it, in the sewage in Cobb County is old, and it's being replaced little by little. But in the meantime, the county has gotten $147 million in CARES and still has money to spend, and they have to get rid of it. And so they've asked for input in that, but I don't know if they're listening or not, but that has to be fixed. And so that is all a problem because of the overbuilding and too much imperious. And in this particular Z72, there is going to be massive flooding because there's no place for that water to go. None, no place. And there are going to be houses built that are going to be very, very close together because of 128 variances, and they're not sticking to the zoning. And this is my concern, is they're not sticking to the zoning. They want to get rid of single family homes like we have. And I'm on half an acre. You get two of those together, you can put up whatever you want. for the new zoning.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We appreciate your sharing.
Thank you.
Next will be Mindy Seeger.
Good morning again. Thank you for the opportunity to come back. I was here yesterday in front of the subcommittee, and I will keep my comments a little shorter today. What I want to ask for this committee is that we take a pause on this and give the county adequate time to provide the impact study. And I know, Chairwoman, you mentioned that, we want to focus on East Cobb today because that's the bill that we're looking at. But I do think it's important. There are 4 cityhood efforts in Cobb happening at the same time. And to think that if all 4 of those come to fruition, there won't be an impact on the greater county. We have to look at that. They don't exist completely in a vacuum. We've talked a little bit, about the smaller footprint. Unfortunately, and I've heard Representative Dollar say several times that he didn't look at the, socioeconomic division of the districts or he mentioned yesterday, he didn't look at the socioeconomic income levels of the proposed city. And that concerns me because we need to understand the tax digest to understand if this is really feasible or not. And it does all come down to money at the end of the day. I think that this city would make right for annexation growth down the road. It has a super small footprint now, but I think we've seen in other surrounding cities where they are struggling with development and to expand their tax digest. And I think we are ripe for annexation long-term. I think the cost will absolutely go up. The budget and the feasibility study is relying on franchise fees, which would give me a 4% increase on my utility bills on day one. And there's the unrealized cost of public safety, which we talked about yesterday. There are some things in the bill as far as we've mentioned fire trucks, what it takes to actually staff and maintain a police department, what it takes to give the equipment to the new fire department that would only exist of 2 fire stations. And we lose that dichotomy of, that size of scale that Cobb County provides us, particularly with fire. I don't know how they maintain that in such a small footprint. And the study itself calls for $0 for facility lease, which means that those who have arranged this city feel entitled to the government center at Lower Roswell, and they've put in their budget $0 for facility lease. They don't get to own that building outright. Even if we could prove that East Cobb has provided for 60% of the taxes for that provided for that building, we still have to pay the rest of the county out for their 40%. That's good business. That's a fiduciary responsibility of the county to not just reassign those assets without compensation for them. They owe that to the county taxpayers at whole. We've also talked a little bit about the confusion, not only of the city council structure and how that works, but we have confusion with our residents by Sewell Mill 01 is one precinct. I just want to talk about this very briefly. Sewell Mill precinct is in the legislation as being inside the city, but addresses within that precinct are out. So those residents are confused if they are in or out of the city border. And that needs to be addressed. And that's true for my co-leader of the East Cobb Alliance, Bill Simon. He is in that particular situation, but he's not alone. So I know my time is up on that, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. You don't have any questions.
Thank you.
We have another representative, and that's Representative Wilkerson. He would like to address this. Please come to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank the committee for this very thoughtful process on the city that impacting Cobb County. I serve in Cobb County, Powder Springs area, but anything we do as a city or area impacts the whole county. And I'm sure the county will talk about that. But I do have a couple of questions because I do have some concerns that I would like to see if we could get some further explanation on. Like the author, I was also originally operating under LC 471103. So like the public, I also had not seen the sub yet, but I did get a chance to look. If you refer to lines 198 to 208, where we talk about the governance structure, which we've had a lot of questions on. My understanding is there'll be 6 city council members, 3 elected at large, and 3 by district. However, reading this, I see conflicting language between lines 200 and 208. And I believe this is one of the changes that was made. In one part, it says they're going to be representing the area like a district, but they're elected citywide. And then another part, I believe it says they're elected by a district, but they're only serving that district. So basically you live in post 1, you're elected by post 1. But then another area, it says you live in post 1, but you're elected by everybody. And so I think that's where the HOA comment came, is that I would just like some clarification. I think we might need to do some tweaks on that, unless you want to take a look at it. And that's for the author.
I'm not on the committee, but can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You referenced the conflicting language, but not the line.
Okay, yeah, let me walk you through
Number.
that.
So if you could, because, you know, if there is an error, we certainly want to correct it. We've gone back and around on this particular pardonability times, and I thought it was. You can help, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So on line 198, it says 3 members of the council should be elected by a majority of the votes by all electors at large. So that's our at-large seats. And then lines 200 to 203, it talks about 3 members of the city council should be elected by the districts provided for in the subsection, which is later on, by a majority of vote of the electors of the city at large. So it's saying you have 3 at large. And then in lines 200, it says you have 3 from districts by the majority of vote of the electors at large. But then when I get into lines 204, it says for the purpose of electing the 3 district members, the city is divided into 3 districts again. And it said one should be elected by the district by majority of electors of such districts. So I'm just curious, do we have an HOA such as when all of it's represented where you could have 4 people in one area, or is it 3 at large and 3 by district?
I'd like to ask lead counsel if he could, because that's who helped write this, if they could clarify, because I'm probably missing something right here.
Okay. Chairman Fleming, do you have something to say about this?
There's nothing confusing at all about the language in the bill. This is very typical when you have super districts in areas. We have this in the Augusta area. You read it all together, and it's just like Representative Chairman Dollar said. You elect everybody at large, but 3 of the people elected have to live in one of the 3 districts. This is common across the state.
So is that the understanding of ledge council as well? Because like I said, if the author's confused, I think the public's confused. So my preference would be for us to kind of have, because this impacts my county.
I think nobody's confused. I think your reading is confused of it.
Okay. It impacts my county to the member of the committee. Unlike 202, which impacted the whole state, this impacts Cobb County. So I think it deserves a thoughtful process, because what we're trying to do is get clarification on the language first, and then we can talk about the merits of that. So I think there's a lot of concerns about the merits, but I want to make sure we get the language tight before we proceed. So I appreciate you understand this, but I would say that the majority of the committee probably has the same confusion. So
I think they're
thank
pretty
you for
smart
that.
people. I bet they understand it.
Okay.
Representative Oliver or Chairman Oliver?
I don't understand it. Line 205, beginning with this sentence, 1 member of the board shall be elected from each district by the majority of electors of such district. That seems like a fairly clear declarative statement. And yet we're saying that they're elected at large. So I'm very confused. Sorry, I'm not keeping up here, but it seems a little confusing to me. This one sentence distracts me significantly.
You have to read it in the context, Representative, if I may, Madam Chair. You have to read it in the context of the whole statement.
I'm going to ask if I would legislative counsel, if you would come forward and add
Yeah.
your comments to it.
This looks like a mistake I made when I was doing one of the earlier versions. I would personally recommend that sentence on line 205 and 206 come out to remove any ambiguity that could be caused by it.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair? Do you want us to wait to do that when we are finished with the witnesses? And ledge counsel is talking about line 205 to 206, the sentence, one member of the board shall be elected from each district by a majority of the electors of such district.
We will address that as a committee amendment at the time,
Thank
at
you,
that
Madam.
time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have one last point that I will, because I know you all are very busy. As I said, that was about a 5-minute cursory view of the bill, and I do apologize that I just received this copy, and I thank you for giving me one. But there are a number of issues that I want to make sure that we're that we have an ample time to look at this, because my understanding is while intergovernmental coordination, and work with me here, intergovernmental coordination basically just looks at the signatures, makes sure that everybody signed off on the bill, that it meets the requirements. My understanding is governmental affairs has a higher threshold obligation. And your obligation is not just to look to make sure the boxes were checked, such as a feasibility study, but you also look at, is this good legislation? And you have a deliberate process. You make sure that that bill is a good bill for not only that city, but the state overall. You have a high level of obligation. So what I'm asking is for us to continue that thoughtful process and work through this and get good legislation that we can take to the citizens of Cobb County. And if it does come for a vote, that they actually know what they're voting on. So unlike intergovernmental coordination, it's not just checking boxes. Governmental affairs, I believe, has a higher obligation for research and investigational delivery process. But thank you to the committee.
Thank you. Let's see. Next to speak will be Chairwoman Lisa Cupid. And again, we're trying to keep our comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to be here today. In reviewing yesterday's committee meeting or subcommittee meeting, I did ask for other members of Cobb County government to be here with me today to address the substance of some of the remarks as they pertain to services that would be provided. Nonetheless, in limited time, I will quickly go through my points and let the honorable members of this committee know that our staff is here to address some of the remarks that have been made. And for clarification, with me today, I have our Deputy County Manager, Jimmy Giese, our Public Safety Director, Randy Kreider, and our Financial Director, Bill Volkman. I have lived in Cobb County for over 20 years. My first introduction to Cobb County was as a resident of East Cobb. So I find it somewhat ironic to be here today. But my love for Cobb County spans all of Cobb. And I want to make sure that I am providing due diligence to the citizens of that area as well as to the entire county. There are some questions with respect to process that would enable the county to have complete information so that our citizens will be well educated as to a vote that may come before them. Prior to me serving as chair of Cobb County, I was a community advocate, and I certainly can support having a sense of place and pride in a community, and I am not opposed to cities. Again, I am opposed to persons having to vote without having clear and accurate information before them. There are some things that I do want to address from a substantive perspective. With the services that we provided that pertain to community development, code enforcement is one of them, as well as zoning. These things do not operate independently, but they operate also with business licensing, with permitting, with economic development, and other facets of community development that also work and depend on other agencies like water, like DOT, and other departments that address infrastructure. Without having these included in the city of East Cobb, there's dependency on the county to collaborate with the city when these things are considered with zoning and code enforcement. And as a county, we have no issue collaborating with our cities. In fact, we appreciate the relationship that we do have. But there's also recognition that at times there is a conflict in policy interests. And there is grave concern about what that conflict could represent when trying to coordinate something as simple as getting a business license, which could frustrate the efforts of the county. There's possible gaps of information that could occur and possible wait times as persons have to deal with the incongruence of information. Also, there's some assertions made with respect to parks and the amount of revenue that will come to the city of East Cobb. Our Parks Director evaluated the information and found that the revenue projected in the feasibility study is actually 65% less than what was shared in the feasibility study. And over this pandemic, the actual revenue that we have is 22% of projected revenues. So there's some question about the numbers that are being asserted for our citizens to weigh for the feasibility of the city. I'm grateful I've met with some members who are proposing the city. We welcome them opportunity to sit down with our staff. Madam Chair, I believe I heard an alarm and time may have run. I would ask if you can just indulge me for another minute.
You may go on for another moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So there is opportunity, again, for us to sit down and truly weigh the merit and substance of what is being asserted in the feasibility study. And this is irrespective of what would be considered in an impact study. And I appreciate you differentiating that. Certainly, there would be an impact to all of Cobb County, as was asserted by Representative Wilkerson. And the city of East Cobb doesn't necessarily bear ownership of that. But again, I share with you that we do value the relationship that we have with our cities. And we would like to think that there's opportunity to sit down together and look at the mutual impact, because to support East Cobb, we would have to make sure our resources are robust enough to be able to do that. And I've already shared with you just one example with the coordination that will be expected when it comes to some of the services as they pertain to community development. I would like, at least for our public safety director, again, to just be able to address some of the comments made with respect to public safety. He was our past fire chief, as well as he now is over many services in public safety, including E911, and there's some questions about coverage of that, but just also coordination and financing of that. And that's why our finance director is here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You have a question, Chairman Fleming?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chairman, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
If this legislature and the governor allows the people of East Cobb to vote on whether or not they're going to be a city, are you going to campaign against it?
Sir, I'm here to support everyone in Cobb County, and I'm here to make sure that accurate and complete information is provided.
So the answer is you will campaign against it?
That is not the answer. As I shared with you, I am here to make sure I serve all the citizens of Cobb County. Let me be very clear. City or county, you always have multiple people on variety of sides of a matter. My role is to serve all citizens of Cobb County. To do anything that undermines someone or a facet of our Cobb County, that directly would undermine my ability to serve them.
So you're in opposition to the bill, correct?
I don't believe I've stated that, sir.
I'm asking.
Sir, again, I'm in opposition to a bill being passed that has not been made clear, where information is inaccurate or incomplete for our voters to make a wise decision.
Does that include this bill?
Yes, sir. At this time, it does.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Nguyen, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for being here this morning.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, it is true that in your role as chair of Cobb County, that one of your responsibilities is to consider the implications of something like this and be thoughtful
Yes, ma'am.
about how this impacts every person in Cobb County. Isn't that true?
Correct, ma'am.
And that's exactly what you're here to do, is to ensure that the city is equipped, or the county is equipped with all the right information, and share with us, the members on this committee who are voting, some of the concerns that you have as it pertains to this bill.
To the best of our ability.
Yes. Thank you for being here, and thank you for representing your county and doing your job as a chairwoman.
Thank you.
Chairman, go ahead, Chairman Oliver.
I couldn't ignore the fact that you were trying to be pushed into a position of for or against a new city, when all you're doing here is trying to show us that you're going to lose $1 million fire truck for $5,000, and that there's going to be other significant impact on the other citizens of Cobb County in relation to one city or 4 new cities. I don't think it's in any way accurate to say you're for or against a bill when you're making very specific and concrete financial issues available to the public and to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Randy Kreider here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I am Randy Crider. I'm the current Public Safety Director at Cobb County. I've got 41 years of experience in public safety, 38 of those being in fire department. Served as the fire chief for Cobb for a little over 5 years, and now I've been in my current role almost 2 full years. And I'm not here to oppose or support cityhood. That's not my role, but my role is, because of my current duties, is to provide all accurate information to the people that may be impacted by cityhood. And I had to say to you that I don't have all of those facts because a lot of questions have not been answered. There's been comments made that we're going to have a better fire department. That concerns me. Cobb County is an ISO 1 and they're an accredited agency. Less than 1% of all fire departments across this country have that. So I'd be curious to know how these residents are going to have a better fire department than what they currently have. I also have questions about, with the current services and the footprint that this incorporates, I have some concerns about response times. Because if I understand it correctly, there'll be 2 fire stations that will be included in this. I don't know if there's going to be additional fire stations built or stood up. Those are questions that I think the citizens need to have answers to. And I'll give you specific examples. A structure fire, significant structure fire, requires currently 11 people to initial response in the accreditation model. And when you think about 2 fire stations and the staffing that they have, I would be curious to know how much is going to be relied upon Cobb County Fire to support operations during a significant event. What happens to those vacant fire stations when those units are on calls? Are we going to be expected to backfill those fire stations? So I have some concerns from that perspective. Right now, you look at the size of this city and you compare it to Marietta and Smyrna. City of Marietta has 6 fire stations. City of Smyrna has 5 fire stations. That concerns me. And the reason it concerns me is, here again, how much are we going to be relied on to provide services to the city? We have a great relationship with the current cities that we work with. We provide fire services already for Powder Springs, Kennesaw, and Acworth. And I believe that's because they get very good service. So there's a lot of questions. Hazmat teams, technical rescue teams, are all of those things going to be provided by the new city, or are they going to rely on Cobb Fire? Fire and life safety education program. There's just a lot of different things that go into having a fire department that is above and beyond just fire trucks sitting in a fire station responding to calls. And so those are questions that I would like to have asked. There was a comment made yesterday about our police officers being moved from one precinct to the other. That is not true, but there are more police officers in certain precincts than there are others. And it's a supply and demand. We provide the amount of officers to deal with the amount of crime. I would ask that you more focus on the availability of those officers in precinct. For instance, you could put 60 officers in precinct 2. With the amount of crime in precinct 2, those units may be always busy, unavailable. You could put 40 officers in precinct 4, but their reliability is greater because they're answering less calls. So that's what I would focus on. And it boils down to response times. That's another thing that concerns me on the fire side of things. What would response times look like if there's only 2 fire stations covering this large of a footprint?
Thank you very much. Your time is up. We appreciate all your input.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we need to hear from Bill Volkman.
Good morning. I'm Bill Volkman. I'm the CFO of Cobb County, and I just wanted to touch briefly on a few of the issues. We did review the feasibility study, and we are obviously neither for or against this, but one of the areas that we do want to look at is the financial impact to not only services, as Director Crider and Chairwoman Cupid already addressed, but also the financial impact to the Cobb County. We know that the proposed feasibility study anticipates taking 2.86 mils that is currently paid to the residents for their fire services to support the operations, as well as various other revenues. Now, the proposed feasibility study would have negative impacts on the county from revenue standpoint in our Cobb County General Fund, as well as our fire fund, and I believe in our 911 fund as well. So that is something that we'd really like to have some time to go through, and then also share those impacts with the citizens so they can make an informed decision. Like I said, and I think Chairwoman Cupid stated, we're neither for nor against. We just want to make sure the information is out there so they can make an informed decision. So that's all I have for you today. Any questions?
Thank
for
you.
me?
Does anyone have a question? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cindy Cooperman.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Cooperman. I'm a resident of East Cobb. I've lived in East Cobb for just over 10 years now, and I'm a member of the East Cobb Cityhood Committee. So I'm here today to speak to you in support of cityhood. I'm one of the organizers on the committee, and one of the main reasons why we're very excited to be able to speak to you here today about this bill is we want to bring more local representation in the form of a city to the residents of East Cobb. We work quite a bit on community engagement and helping people understand what the objectives are and what is in the bill and what that impact would be on the local citizens. I do want to point out just one correction on a comment. It was suggested that we have said that we would provide better service, and at no point in time have we said that. We're very happy with the services that we receive in terms of fire. I don't think there's any concern about a lack of service there. And I believe that we will continue to receive a very high level of service and public safety in what's being proposed here in this bill today. Thank you.
I don't see any questions for you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Craig Chapman.
Hi, my name is Craig Chapin. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I too live in the heart of East Cobb. Actually, of all the speakers today, I've been there the longest. I'm approaching right at 50 years. When I moved to the heart of East Cobb, where the Park Air Mall, Lower Roswell Road, Johnson Street intersection was a dirt airstrip. So seeing quite a lot of development in that area. Went to Eastside Dodge and Walton School, so educated in the area also. Very proud, and I would echo Cindy's comment from a second ago. We are very proud to be part of Cobb County. This is not about a criticism of Cobb or its leadership. And not at any time have I heard anyone from our committee really take that position. So I do want to clarify where we come from. Where we come from is really the ability to have local control on those issues that are closest to us, such as the ones that we proposed within the city. As an example, we find that in the area of East Cobb, there's not a lot of green space left for development. So therefore, if you look at what the next generation of development looks like, it's really kind of a redevelopment. Who better to make those decisions than the people that are most affected by it and lived in that area? We're talking about a proposed city of roughly 55,000 residents, 25 square mile area. So it's a very, very concise, distinct area. And we're also talking about a city that's still going to be part of Cobb County, still will be sharing some services with Cobb County as referenced today. As it relates to the feasibility study, the process of feasibility study was unique to me as I had not participated in the first round. I actually joined the committee on the second time around as they kind of relaunched the effort. I was excited about some of the benefits of that, and so have joined that. With a technology and kind of analytics background, I'm very much interested in the numbers and how the numbers tie out. As was referenced today, the difference between the feasibility study, the numbers for the feasibility study were not numbers we provided. They were the numbers that came from requests to Cobb County from the state of Georgia who did the study. If the numbers for Parks and Recs were off by the numbers they talked about, all of Parks and Rec revenue in the feasibility study, if I remember correctly, is under $200,000, is in like 170,000. So if that is one category that is off, it is not a minimum, it's a de minimis amount in the overall scope of the budget. I'm excited about the ability to have 6 folks that you run into in the community, that you see at the grocery stores, that you see at church, you see in the recreation facilities, and that really make those decisions that we feel like are most relevant to our area. Most importantly, we're here, and yesterday there was some thorough discussion that people are opposed to the city that live in the area, people are for the city that live in the area, and what our cityhood committee is advocating for is the right of the citizens in our area to vote for that. In an area of Cobb County that has grown massively since I've been there in the 50 years. I think we're 385, give or take, square miles, 785,000 residents. And we have 5 representatives, of which those of us in East Cobb get to vote for 2. We're proposing a scenario where we have 55,000 residents where we're able to vote for all 6. And so it just gives us much more local control in those areas we feel like are most important to our community. Thank you for the opportunity, and we would appreciate the opportunity for the citizens of East Cobb to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You don't have any questions. Our last speaker is Chairman Ed Setzler.
Madam Chair, appreciate your time and the indulgence of the committee. As a co-sponsor of Representative Dollar, Chairman Dollar, I'd considered sitting here and being part of the longer presentation, but I did want to, as a co-sponsor of the bill, address some of the concerns or some of the issues raised by folks. And again, I think this is well framed by this question of representative government. Right now, as personally, and many of my constituents are residents of unincorporated Cobb County, with nearly 800,000 people in Cobb County and 4 elected commissioners. The relationship of constituents to local government representatives who control what effectively happens in their backyard is 1 representative per 200,000 people. 1 representative for 200,000 people. What's being proposed is 1 elected representative for 9,000 people. The density of representation is more than 20 times the attention and density in the proposed city of East Cobb. That's what this is about. This is about density of representation. In fact, when you look at the 2 cities I represent, the cities of Ackworth and Kennesaw, about 30,000 population with roughly 6 council member, mayor, 6 electeds, you've got a density of representation of about 1 to 5,000. So the other cities in Cobb that I represent have 40 times the density of representation, meaning there's 1/40th the number of constituents per elected official to give attention to local needs to folks in the cities than exists in unincorporated Cobb County. And I believe one of the reasons I'm supporting all the cityhood movements from Vinings to Mapleton to Lost Mountain to East Cobb is because I believe that local representation is very important to give credible representation. A number of questions have been raised, and I'll speak to them if I can, Madam Chair. Appreciate senior staff coming from Cobb today. I know our public safety director is extremely busy and has a lot going on. I would say, appreciate Chief Grider being here. I would say, though, as was raised, at no point has East Cobb said that their fire department will be better than Cobb County's. I would note, though, one thing that Representative Nulowitz said when she talked about the size and the scale of East Cobb being roughly the size and scale of Smyrna and Marietta, 55 to 60,000 people. And the prospect that fire services will drop. It's interesting. Smyrna does not have an ISO 1 fire department. They have an ISO 2 fire department, still very strong. But Marietta has an ISO 1 fire department. So the prospect that a city of roughly 55 to 60,000 people is going to see a vast diminution or reduction of services isn't strictly true. And even if we talk about the idea that an ISO 2 caliber fire department is still very solid service. And that's something, again, that new cities can grow into. I would say the idea that Smyrna has 5 fire stations and Marietta has 6 does beg the question that if East Cobb is represented with only 2, has East Cobb, have the 55,000 East Cobb residents over the years been underrepresented in fire because there's not 5 or 6 fire stations and there's 60,000 population area that a Smyrna or a Marietta, or as the case may be over time, a city of East Cobb might enjoy? So I asked the question, is there the density of service provided for fire in East Cobb that might be provided over time by a city of East Cobb? Much as we discussed this issue of police. The East Cobb residents have seen over the years the density of policing on the beats in East Cobb are not as densely policed as other parts of the county. And as I said yesterday, if I'm managing law enforcement across Cobb County, I would put the police resources where they most need to be, Madam Chair. But I do think it begs the question, are the citizens of East Cobb getting their tax dollars worth in law enforcement that they might if they were able to be their own city? Madam Chair, am I limited to 3 minutes, or is it?
You have a question.
Okay.
No. All right. Well, yes, you do. You have a question. Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you share with me from the top, the northern tip of the proposed city to the bottom, how many miles is that encompassed?
Yeah, I looked that up. That
Oh,
was
great.
raised.
Thank you.
It's just
from Johnson's Ferry, which which runs the length of it, it's just under 7 miles.
Okay, thank you.
And from east to west, it's just under Roswell Road or Highway 120, which pretty much cuts across the middle longitudinally or latitudinally, is just under 5 miles.
Okay, thank you. Two questions about the governance structure. You mentioned the importance of having a more representative.
And Madam, I do have some more remarks. I'm glad to address the question then.
Sure, sure. Chairman Setzler, you mentioned the importance of having a more representative government with this proposed city. How is it more representative of the people for a council to appoint their mayor than for the people to elect the mayor?
Great question. And I will address one of the other questions you raised earlier, Representative Nguyen, but I'll address that one now. The issue is one of being a consensus city. You know, you see, I've seen circumstances, and it was alluded to by Chairman Dollar, this idea that mayors run and believe they have a separate mandate distinct from the council. The council, they have power only in council, and they just are sort of something that needs to be contended with, but mayors have some mandate independent of them. I'm troubled by that. I think the idea that there's a move towards consensus, there's a structure in place that to the representative's question earlier, that requires things to be worked out that you can get a 4-2 vote to pass something. I mean, a 4-2 vote among 6 is a simple majority. There's no strict supermajority requirement, but the way it works structurally, it requires that 4-2 consensus as opposed to things going 3-2, 3-2, or 4-3 all the time. So there's a structural consensus there. And that interest in having consensus in the city is not just in the structure of the way the council works, but in the way that the council, again, works amongst each other and picks one among equals to be chair. It works that way at the Cobb County School Board, for example. We're going to be having a new Cobb County School Board chairman established literally this week. It happens on a kind of a recurring basis. And it's my belief that the chair then recognizes they're a lead among the council. They still are able to do the ribbon cuttings. They're still able to perform all the functions of a mayor. It's not for a 4-year period, it's for a 2-year period. But there's a sense of accountability to that consensus council that I think is an important part of this city structure. I think it's something we should welcome. I think that really empowers the representatives of the people, as opposed to having one mayor that believes they have unitary and single authority to make deals, to talk about development opportunities. And candidly, I think we think about losing focus or perhaps, heaven forbid, even corruption. 6 people are way less corruptible than perhaps one. And I think that council, the conciliatory structure, is a very positive.
Follow-up question, and it does relate to that concept of the representative government. In the scenarios that we brought up earlier, Representative Gravely said there's no scenario under which 6 members would live in the same neighborhood in the same cul-de-sac. But under the way that this bill is written, there is certainly a scenario where 4 members of the body could live in the same neighborhood, in the same cul-de-sac, in the same district, and those 4 members could elect or to appoint a mayor of their choosing who could also live in that same cul-de-sac or neighborhood. So we're talking about a scenario in which a city of 60,000 people, 5 of the governing members could be from District 1. And that mileage, 7 miles from the north to the south, we're in downtown Atlanta right now. You take us 8 miles down the road and we're in Buckhead.
Yeah. I think the number would be 4, not 5. But let me remind you of something. I think you were here when your colleague Representative Anulowicz was extolling the virtues of the 6 legacy cities in Cobb County. She was talking about how well run they are and how they're great models of good cityhood. I would remind you that the cities of Ackworth and cities of Kennesaw have less protections in this. To the point that you're discussing. I mean, this city is careful to apportion 3 specific posts in which one person has to live to make sure there has to be representation in each of 3 areas. The cities of Ackworth and Kennesaw, each of whom have roughly between 28 and 35,000 people, have no requirement to live in a post. There is zero geographic requirement for those aldermen and councilmen to live in any specific place. In those cities, they could literally all be next door neighbors. Does that happen? No, it doesn't happen, because there's a sense in which representation across the city is meaningful. So the cities that Representative Anulowitz held up as being model cities for our state, 2 of those 6 have a structure with less protection than this bill brings. This bill creates this 3-post structure to ensure that can happen. But it has a balance of that, all elected officials being at large, with a post structure. It's almost a hybrid of those 2. And I think that's the wisdom of this bill. It takes into account the best of both.
Thank you. You have one question, Representative Shannon. If you would be brief, please, and we need to not repeat questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll just ask you real quickly, again, since the public can't see what we're looking at, and I know there has been some changes from the original bill to this one, including going from all at-large representation to now 3 and 3. I don't know if you were most involved in crafting this bill, but can you just tell us the other significant changes from the original?
Yeah,
I think that's already been addressed and answered. So
Chairman Dollar said he didn't know.
well, our legislative council is gone, and I think we're not going to drag this out any further.
And Madam Chair, I would just say briefly,
Briefly.
The things that are reflected here are not somehow moving in a direction away from the public. It's the request of the public in the meetings that have been put into this, as Representative Sain said earlier, that can't be put on the website till it passes out of this committee. But again, that issue of the post that we've discussed exhaustively is really the core of that. There's been some other technical changes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to indulge the committee, I'll wrap up and just address a couple things. One thing I would say is, the idea of Ms. Seeger and even others have suggested, slowing down this process. This bill was filed, as you know, Madam Chair, 9 months ago. There's been ample time to address members. In fact, Chairman Dollar went and met with our county chairman to discuss this issue. In the months since this has happened, our county has put in place a detailed, relatively costly, but very detailed study to change our zoning or the zoning and development standards for the county. So the county's ability to do studies like this are very robust. Cobb is a very strong county. It's got great resources, has a great consultant base and senior staff. So I have no concerns, Madam Chair, that the county doesn't have the sophistication to understand details. And I would encourage them to work with the authors and the potential city leadership as this process moves forward. Again, don't want to belabor points that have already been made, but appreciate the chair's consideration. Once again, as I've said, this is an issue of representative government. I live in unincorporated Cobb County myself, and all these doomsday concerns about what it may do to residents would land on me, my family, and others. And I just don't think they're credible in a way that would raise a concern to not support the powerful argument for representative government that this bill represents. So that, Madam Chair, appreciate your time.
Thank you. I recognize Representative Anderson.
Madam Chair, if I may, at this point, I would like to make a motion that the committee adopt an amendment to this bill, and that amendment state or basically have the action of removing the sentence which begins on line 205 and ends on line 206. And at the appropriate time, I'd like to call for a question on the amended bill.
Thank you. I'll recognize. Yes, I was getting ready to recognize Chairman Fleming.
Move to pass.
Thank you. We've got a do pass. And now we will have and recognize your request.
Okay, I do make that a motion that we amend the bill as specified to remove the sentence beginning on line 205 and ending on 206.
Thank you. Yes, we can do that as a committee substitute. We have on the floor the bill itself. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we need to take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Amendment.
Okay, now we will vote on the amendment. Okay, and since if you would repeat the amendment.
The amendment I proposed Okay, that would be to remove the sentence that begins on line 205 and ends on line 206.
Okay. Everyone understand that? Representative Maynard?
Yeah, I think that the amendment, and I might be wrong, but on 201, I feel like that's what the problem is, because it says the 3 members shall be elected from the districts, and then part C on 201 says by a majority vote of the electors at large.
Let me refer to our legislative council because I think those are correct.
If the intention is to have it so that the 3 members elected who are residents of one of the 3 districts are still elected by all of the voters at the city, then the amendment proposed by Representative Anderson will accomplish that goal, should accomplish that goal.
Representative Fleming?
Madam Chair, thank you. I support the amendment. That one sentence that we're removing uses the word district twice. In the first instance, it refers to the district for residency. You would interpret the last word of district, the voting district. The word district can mean 2 things. It can
Okay.
mean where you vote from and where you live. And it's used interchangeably in that sentence. However, as Ledge Council stated, it makes more sense to remove it because you remove that possible ambiguity. So I
Okay.
support the amendment and I
You're
ask for the question.
Okay, we've got a motion and I take that as a second. All those in favor on the amendment will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. And that will be as a committee substitute. Okay, now we will take a vote on the committee. Yes, you have a question?
If I could,
Okay.
Chair Lady, thank you. Thank you for allowing that. Really, it's just to thank all the speakers who've come down today and to all the people who worked on this and for the committee and the subcommittee yesterday for the thoughtful deliberation. Many things have been said, and I think that it boils down to a very simple initiative, and that is to allow a community to further define what it wants its community to be. And I do think that concept of self-governance is very important for my community. As I said, I was born there and I've called it home my entire life, and it's served it my entire adult life. It's very important to me. And this was not something that I was on board with at first, but after looking at the issue and listening to the points and the arguments, I came to the conclusion, as many more have, that it wasn't in fact more government. It was not a layer of government. It was simply a shift of certain parts of government to a more local level. I introduced this bill 4 years ago and did not pursue it the following year based on public output. It seemed like a lot of people had concerns or didn't flat out like it the same way that I didn't. So I didn't based on that feedback. I did not pursue the bill. I can say undoubtedly that as people have learned more about this and the education has worked, and the feedback and the response has been 180. It has been overwhelmingly supportive. I wouldn't be here if that weren't the case. This entire process has been about the community, and the support has been overwhelming, and not just anecdotally, which we all have mentioned here. Myself or some of the speakers, or possible outcomes, but we've done polling and we've done every town hall, every every chance we've gotten, we've taken feedback from people. You know, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Yes and no questions, further expound. And I'm very pleased at the response. And I'm very pleased with the product. I also want to take the opportunity to thank Representative Wilkerson for finding the I guess the conflicting language in that bill and making it better. With that, I would just ask the committee to say not do the residents of, you know, my residents of East Cobb deserve this, but do the citizens of DeKalb deserve it? Do the citizens of Smyrna deserve it? Do the citizens of Ackworth deserve it? Marietta? And, you know, would these same representatives author legislation to do away with those charters so that they're unincorporated and not have that level of local government? So with that, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman, I'll wrap and say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a couple comments that we have. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote for the bill for several reasons, but I just want to state a few of those. There have been some discussion about the form of government. If you go to the Georgia Municipal Association handbook, it explains several different forms of government for local government. This is a hybrid of that. This form of government exists in other places. I've seen both. I actually think the argument that the council itself elects their mayor who chairs the meeting makes it a stronger form of government. I've seen both, and I think that one actually works better. There were issues about fire brought up here. You heard the public safety director state that some cities in Cobb have their own fire department and some cities in Cobb contract with the county to provide that. This city will have probably the choice to do whichever one they think is best for them. So that's not going to be a problem. I actually saw this happen in my own county. When we developed a countywide fire department, the city stepped back and worked with the county for the transition, and I'm sure it will happen here. Lastly, I would say two things, Madam Chair. I have supported bills that Democrats have brought to this committee over the years to form cities in DeKalb and Fulton. And I hope I'm wrong from the leaning of the questioning that we're getting. Just because Republicans are bringing this bill now, I hope they won't vote against it, but they'll do like several Republicans did in this committee on the past and support those city efforts, because here's why. We're not going to be the final say so on this. Everybody that's for this or against this will be able to make their voice known to the people of this area, and they will actually vote as to whether or not they become a city. So I would urge the committee members to support the bill.
Thank you very much. Representative Maynard, you have a comment?
Representative Dollar, I just want to say that I feel like I need to make the comment before I make the vote. I think that people in residences and communities should have a voice. I know exactly where East Cobb is. I wish that the county had, you know, since this was introduced 9 months ago, that an impact study was done initially. I do wish that there was more collaboration that could have taken place prior to us voting today. I'm going to support you and vote yes for this, mainly because I know what the borders are around East Cobb. But for those people that are doing other studies, other bills coming forward, my hope is that there's more collaboration between the counties and these new proposed cities. But I am going to vote yes to support your particular community.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And let the
support.
people have the right to choose if they want East Cobb to be a city or not.
Thank you for that support. And I did reach out to our new chairman and our new commissioner to talk to them about this and to let them know that this, you know, this had nothing to do with their leadership. You know, this effort started long before they ever ran for those positions. To let them know that this was not about that. You know, we're still Cobb Countyans, and this is just about enjoying the same community self-governance that Marietta, Kennesaw, Ackworth, the others enjoy.
Thank you very much. Okay, on the table, we have a motion and it's been amended. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of this bill as a committee substitute will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Congratulations, you've got your bill and it can move forward.
Thank you for that.
Certainly, if you would like to. All those will raise their hand, please, that are aye. Okay, I would like for those that are on online virtually, if you would cast aye, please say aye.
Aye. We do a roll call vote virtually.
Okay, do a vote. Okay, those on roll call. Micah Gravely,
Micah Gravely votes yes.
Matt Hatchett,
Matt Hatchett votes yes.
Rhonda Burrows.
No.
No. Okay. That's it. Do we, no, okay, she was the no, but the rest of those, all those against it, please raise your hand. Okay, the ayes have it. I want to thank everyone that came today and participated and were able to air their information. We do have more cities coming. Please bring your information and I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.